You want me to put that on my Tudor?
Harry's wife. A warped sense of reality. I've repeatedly explained to you that there is no such thing as an objective reality. There is your reality, and then there is everybody else's reality. Your reality is how your brain perceives the information that it receives from your eyes, your ears, your taste buds, and other sources of information that is relayed to you. Invariably and often, your brain causes you in effect to hallucinate. And what it does is it creates the best interpretation that it can of the world around you to suit you. That's also the case with us. Although we have a different view of reality compared to yours as a consequence of our narcissism and psychopathy, the fact is that it is our perspective, our perception also. The difference is that your perspective is a shared one, shared by many, many people, and therefore it becomes what is described as normality. Our perception, although normal for us, is seen outside of your normality and therefore is viewed as disordered. The fact is that everybody has a perspective of the world, and it can differ. For instance, those who suffer from chromesthesia see sound as colour. That's viewed as a disorder, because it isn't viewed as normal, i.e. the majority don't experience it. But it's normal to that individual. They are not making it up. It is what they perceive, because there's a bit of their brain that's wired differently. Similarly, the narcissist views the world in a particular way because of the way that our brains have been wired in order to protect us against the issues of threats to control and the necessity of the provision of fuel. Accordingly, to a non-narcissist, the way that a narcissist looks at the world, it is viewed as warped, that there is a distortion field that surrounds us, that information passes through it in relation to people and is processed and programmed differently. Here, a Vanity Fair writer has appeared on a podcast for the purposes of talking about Harry's wife. Let's find out if her profiling of Harry's wife is accurate. This appears in the Mercury News, written by Martha Ross. It explains a Vanity Fair writer who was ahead of the curve for American journalists doing critical examinations of Harry's wife opened up this week about what she's learned since profiling the American Duchess of Sussex in 2018. Similarly, I was way ahead of the curve in explaining that she was a narcissist, and I did so many years ago. In a conversation with ex-BBC journalist Andrew Gold for his On the Edge podcast, Vanessa Grigoriadis explains why Harry's wife is the product of her upbringing in a dysfunctional family on the fringes of Hollywood, the world's so-called dream factory. As Grigoriadis explained in the podcast and in her Vanity Fair story, the wife of Prince Harry is an ambitious striver who has long sought to be a household name and to rise above her family's middle-class but unconventional shaggy dog-tail existence. Of course, the reason is that her narcissism causes her to strive in that direction for the purposes of gaining more fuel, more people to control, those character traits and residual benefits, and therefore it makes her ambitious so she gets those things. To do that, she worked hard in high school and college, struggled to make it in Hollywood, aggressively courted press attention as a B-list cable TV actor, and crafted narratives about her life that are not necessarily aligned with reality, revision of history. Grigoriadis agreed that the latter is a very Hollywood thing to do, and it's no surprise, of course, because Hollywood is festooned with narcissists. What we now know about her is that she has a strange sort of relationship to objective reality, Grigoriadis said. Now, of course, there is no such thing as an objective reality. All reality is subjective. However, there is a shared subjectivity which becomes the majority and thus is seen as the objective reality. Gregoriadis stated she has this warped reality, and then she marshals evidence underneath it to support a thesis that may not be the case. In Gregoriadis' Vanity Fair story, which looks at the breakdown in Harry's wife's relationship with her father, Thomas Markle, and her older half-siblings, she offered an example of the Duchess self-mythologising. When Harry's wife and Harry were still working members of the royal family, they embarked on a highly successful royal tour of Australia and the South Pacific. Crowds loved the Duchess's almost magical mix of micromanagement and moments of authenticity, Gregoriadis wrote. But Harry's wife's perfection was pierced after she delivered a speech at a university in Fiji about the importance of college and of funding girls' education, Gregoriadis said. It was through scholarships, financial aid programs and work study where my earnings from a job on campus went directly towards my tuition that I was able to attend university, Harry's wife said, and without question, it was worth every effort. Harry's wife's claims about putting herself through Northwestern University were moving and inspiring. But Gregoriadis said Harry's wife was clearly trying to place herself in a seemingly relatable rag-to-riches Cinderella story, laced with strong independent woman self-sufficiency, i.e. a revision of history. Gregoriadis wrote that Harry's wife might not have been telling the truth, at least according to her estranged half-sister, Samantha Markle, who immediately took to social media to call bullshit on her college story. Samantha Markle said their father, a retired Hollywood lighting designer, paid for her college education. At the time, Samantha Markle called Harry's wife delusionally absurd. In the podcast interview, Gold doesn't ask Gregoriadis if Harry's wife is delusional, but he said he wonders how the former TV actor compares to the narcissists and sociopaths the writer met doing investigative stories on the Nixon cult. Gregoriadis said Harry's wife isn't a psychopath. That's correct. But she said it's her hunch that there is something off about all of them. Indeed, that is correct, as I've explained that her mother is a narcissist, her father is a narcissist. As Harry's wife has been in the eye for close to 7 years, she has begun to reveal some problems with authenticity, as Gold said. Gregoriadis described how those issues became apparent to her when she first reported on Harry's wife in 2018. Gregoriadis was told by people who knew the former Suits star that she can easily come across as warm and personable, facade management, but that she isn't also someone you can be friends with. That's because she isn't actually able to attach herself to anybody, and of course, as I've explained to you repeatedly, people are just there to be used by her. Gregoriadis also mentioned a writer colleague who spent a day with Harry's wife at her home in California for a magazine profile. Her takeaway was, "This person just is not on the level," Gregoriadis said, with her friend also saying, "I don't want to be here." While Gregoriadis didn't name the writer or her publication, it's easy to wonder whether she was talking about Alison P. Davis, a writer for The Cut, who reportedly was handpicked by Harry's wife to write a profile of her. The 6,400-word story titled Harry's Wife of Monty Shit Show was both a blockbuster and highly controversial. See parts passim in relation to the analysis of that. Davis spent the day interviewing Harry's wife at her mansion in Monty Shit Show, where she moved after she and Harry departed royal life in 2020. At first it seemed that Davis had crafted a glowing tribute to the Duchess, but bit by bit the story revealed itself to be a carefully worded takedown of her pretensions about her California lifestyle, her marriage, her parenting choices, and her importance in royal history. It also presented the Northwestern Theatre major as performing through the interview, speaking as though she had a tiny bachelor producer in her brain directing what she says, which in effect, of course, is her narcissism, as I've explained to you repeatedly. Gregoriadis said she tried to get the writer to come on her own podcast, Infamous, but Davis refused. The writer said that the people had been coming after her on the internet who are stans of Harry's wife, Gregoriadis said. Clearly, the sugars. Harry's wife clearly wasn't happy with the story, telling Variety a couple of months later that she tends to be really trusting, really open, but that she could survive the setback. By December, Newsweek royal reporter Jack Royston suggested that the story may have marked a turning point in how the American media covered Harry's wife and Harry, with American critics freely picking apart the couple's Netflix documentary, Harry and Harry's Wife, especially their continued practice of sharing royal secrets to stay relevant. Gregoriadis agreed that the American media had long been in love with the Sussexes. She said she got pushback for her 2018 profile, with an editor telling her, "We're not going to say anything negative about Harry's wife." That's in contrast with much of the British media, especially the tabloid press, While Gregoriadis said she's not a fan of the tabloids, she disputed the idea that the tabloids were overwhelmingly racist or cruel to Harry's wife when she and Harry were first dating. Mostly the tabloids were curious about the new woman in Harry's life and were happy to sell newspapers by playing up the romance, she said. Of course, as we know, Harry's wife's allegations that it was racism was all part of the threat to control that she felt. Certainly the tone changed after Harry's wife and Harry married, with stories starting to pop up about Tiaragate, and either Harry's wife or Kate making the other cry before Harry's wife's wedding, Gregoriadis reported in Vanity Fair. She also disputed the idea that the UK tabloids were this horrific monster in Harry's wife's life. They may have been a monster for Harry, given that the paparazzi hounded his mother, Princess Diana, when she was alive and were present at her death, she said. Harry has also been in London to attend a hearing for a lawsuit against associated newspapers. The publishers of the Daily Mail urging that its editors and reporters engaged in phone hacking and other means of illegal information. Gregoriadis differentiates between whatever Harry experienced from the tabloids and what Harry's wife dealt with. It's not a monster in her mind, because she is the one who would go out for drinks with Piers Morgan, Gregoriadis said. She was desperate for the press to be interested in her. But of course what Gregoriadis has failed to pick up on, that as a narcissist, the press are there to be utilised when they're doing what she wants, but the moment they criticise her, they're all painted black. Gregoriadis also said that it's become apparent that both Harry's wife and Harry believe they have an ace in the hole when it comes to addressing negative media attention. Harry will bring up how his mother was killed by the media. In this way, the media becomes evil, and any press manipulation the Sussexes engages in is completely justified, because they are fighting this enormous braying monster, Gregoriadis said. So interestingly, somebody else, of course, that noticed that in effect there was something off about Harry's wife, and that she demonstrated a propensity for revising history, but also wasn't actually fully clear in the way that I was as to what she actually is and how that affects her behaviour. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.